Welcome back to another episode of Live with the K-Hub. You already know who it is. It's Kenny, King of Clapbacks. And I want to go ahead and send out a prayer to George Floyd and his family. And I'm also sending out a lot of prayers and for the protests, the peacefully protesters out there in Minneapolis right now. Well, before we get started, I just want to go ahead and introduce my lovely panel. Reecie, what you sipping on today?
Hey, y'all, listen, to be Black in America right now requires a drink. I got an old-fashioned tonight. Cheers.
I ain't mad at you. It's a serious situation going on right now. What about you, Drew? What you sipping on?
I'm keeping it ghetto. Red Solo Cup, orange Kool-Aid. That's it, that's how I'm feeling right
now. And what's up, Sydney A? What's going on? What you sipping on tonight?
What's up, everybody? Y'all know it's your girl Sydney A back, and I got, I'm loose with the goose because I need, something a little strong. So I got a little grenadine in here. And I also want to take this moment to shout out my girl. Her name is Stretch Mark Mommy on Twitter. That's what my look is inspired by. One of her looks. She's a Black woman makeup influencer. And I wanted to give this moment to shout out some of us that are in the creative community. It has been a tough week for a lot of us. So just on a lighter note, shout out to Stretch Mark Mommy, at Stretch Mark Mommy, aka Cheyenne. And thank you so much for the inspiration because it's definitely needed.
Oh yeah, she did that. I love them banter knives, girl. That's it. That's the look. And then Maya, what's up? How you doing, Miss Girl?
I'm good, like the rest of you. It's been a trying week and I'm exhausted. I've already had some white wine. I will pick that up a little bit later. I'm going to have a little water for right now and then pick up the drinking right after this. So there you go.
All right, let's get into it, y'all. So Drew, with everything that's going on right now, could you tell us a little bit about the background of what basically happened with George Floyd?
So I appreciate it, Kenny. So what's happening with George Floyd? Obviously, we saw the very disturbing video of the officer that had him down in a prone position, hands handcuffed behind his back, and then with his body weight, with his knee on his neck, literally taking a knee on his neck. So the report that actually came out today, initial report from the ME medical examiner, saying that George Floyd may have possibly died from essentially what they're saying is pre-existing medical conditions and not necessarily the knee on the neck. As we all know, I don't even, and this is a weird day for me because I found myself actually agreeing with Meghan McCain, saying that the Floyd family needs to have an independent medical examiner step in to do an actual autopsy. But the thing about it is this, is the broader issue is that during the video you saw him down saying he can't breathe. He wasn't a threat. He wasn't biting. He wasn't even fighting back. He wasn't resisting. The video that came out before that showed him fully compliant with police commands, no resisting whatsoever. It's literally what pretty much every officer would ever really want in a situation where you're protecting someone and detaining them, and they actually go and comply. And it's amazing how, the question is how you get from that to being face down. But the issue there is the fact is how long he was in that position face down. That position, police officers, I've heard this from a detective that was actually part of a police investigations unit that would look at cases of whether it's police use of force, and they would review those. He was explaining that police officers are trained in that situation to not allow people to stay face down like that for extended periods of time. And the reason for that is because people literally die that way. We're not even talking about the knee to the neck yet. I haven't even gotten to that part yet. But even just face down with you handcuffed behind your back for an extended period of time, there's a term that they use called positional asphyxiation. And you may hear it come up more often, but it's called positional asphyxiation. The body, when it's in that position too long, isn't really designed, especially with your arms restrained behind your back, isn't really designed to maintain that healthily. So training does not or encourages police officers, yes, you can put someone face down and control the situation, but immediately once everything's under control, you are usually sitting someone up, having them sit upright, or getting help. In this case, that was not the case. He was not only in that position, but also had the force of a body weight forcing down from a knee onto his neck. We saw him not moving, and then again, the officer didn't move and sat there without moving. So that's the issue that's going on there. Also, the police officers have a responsibility. It's interesting. even if you're catching someone who you think is the bad guy or whatever the case is, even if they committed a crime, no matter what, you also have the responsibility to render aid to that individual. So if you're a police officer and you have to make, you may have to make a hard tackle or something, they say immediately when you see injury, you do render aid. You call in an ambulance and that, but you also administer first aid as well to make sure you don't sit there and extend a period of time with your knee on someone's neck, and especially in that particular position where they're the most vulnerable. In this Mr. Floyd's case, that proved to be fatal. But yeah, so that's what we're working on now, and I think that there needs to be an independent autopsy and medical examination with that.
Amen. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It seems like being Black in America is this is the most deadliest thing to be is Black in America, especially when you're trying to comply. I mean, earlier today we saw a witness of Omar Amenez, who's actually a CNN reporter, actually be completely compliant and arrested for no reason, just practicing his freedom of press, which was completely scary. I don't know if anybody else watched that, but that was very heartbreaking. And it kind of just showed on live television what we have to deal with on a regular day-to-day basis, just being Black in America. So what's going on? Reece, do you have anything to say about this today?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really inconsolable time, I think, right now to be Black in America, because I think this is not new. I mean, obviously, we've been dealing with this, the the Rodney King uprising on the acquittals of those officers, and that police brutality case was 1992. We've been seeing a lot of clips circulating. Dr. King, the riots are the language of the unheard. We've talked about Baldwin, Malcolm X, all of these things. We're still dealing with the same shit year after year, week after week, decade after decade. And I think that there's a lot of despair and righteous anger about what's happening. Senator Kamala Harris was on Joy Reid. She was also on Roland Martin today, and she flatly said that the streets are stained with Black blood, period. And it's just something that we're fed up with. We're sick and tired of being sick and tired. But, there are tangible things that can happen after the press conference on Thursday with the district attorney, who basically, gave this really ridiculous, I'll call it a performance, by accusing Marilyn Mosby, the Black district or state's attorney in Baltimore, for rushing to judgment, and saying that's why the officers in the Freddie Gray slaughter is basically were acquitted because she rushed to judgment. No, they were acquitted because we have a society that does not value Black lives. That's why they were acquitted. And saying it's going to take 9 months and this, that, and the other. But, last night we saw the images of Minneapolis burning. We saw the images of the 3rd precinct burning. And that had people stand up and take notice. So I particularly am not interested in any kind of respectability politics around this. I call it uprising. Other people call it uprising. It's not about being peaceful, because even if one person, even so much as sneers at a cop, they're going to say violence. But it actually worked. And historically speaking, for those who say it takes us backwards to have things like violence or fires or things of that nature, no, it does not. That's ahistorical. In fact, it's things like these uprisings throughout the course of our history that have precipitated action and reforms. And so we saw today that the district attorney reversed course and charged Derek Chauvin, who was the person who strangled, murdered, publicly executed George Floyd with, I believe it was 3rd-degree murder. And there are people that are going to quibble with the charges. Indictments, a superseding indictment can be upgraded at any point. At this point, they're obviously going with something that can withstand some sort of initial pretrial hearing. So I don't necessarily quibble with that. But we have seen in this particular case, as well as the case, unfortunately, we have too many examples of what leadership looks like, what advocacy looks like, because we've had too many examples of Black people being killed by the police or these slave patrols of self-deputized people who take it upon themselves to be overseers and regulators of how free Black people move in this country. And so Senator Kamala Harris called for the actual prosecutions, the murder prosecutions, for not just Derek Chauvin, but for the cops who failed, as Drew said, to intervene in this situation. She's done the same. She's called for a pattern and practices investigation, and not just the police department, but in the district attorney's office. That does set her apart from other people. She called for that in her national platform, which she ran for president. And that's really important. As Attorney General, she opened up pattern and practices investigations for Kern County and for Bakersfield County. Those were the deadliest counties, police departments for police shootings when she was Attorney General. And so she did act on that. But I think that what it underscores is when we talk about cultural competency, when we talk about credibility in our community, and there are going to be people, in particular, the so-called progressives, that will try to use what's happening now as oh, Kamala is a cop, and so she's what's wrong with what's going on. Absolutely not. We're not going to blame a Black woman for not being able to resolve centuries of systemic issues with a system that is upheld by a wide variety of factors and people for not being able to successfully change it with the snap of a finger. We're not going to do that. But what this situation actually underscores is that we need somebody precisely like Senator Kamala Harris, former Attorney General of California, former District Attorney of San Francisco, who has the experience, who has decades of criminal justice reform advocacy fighting for community policing when she established the 21st century policing working group to advance issues of community policing in the largest state of the country, California. When she convened the racial profiling advisory board. So she has a long record of advocating in these issues. And so there's going to be people that will try to smear her record and try to paint things in a way, or just not even have specifics, but just try to say she was a prosecutor, she was a quote unquote cop, therefore she's disqualified. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're not going to allow you to do that. And the important thing, like I was actually getting to before I got off on this tangent, is that Kamala Harris has the competency and the credibility and the empathy to go into our communities and be a healer and be a person that can bring upon calm, a person who's not going to patronize us, a person who doesn't offer lip service, but offers solutions. And that's really the value in what she has shown. She's not called what's happening riots. She hasn't, wagged the finger and done the respectability politics. She's talked about the anger and tried to communicate the anger and the despair that the Black community feels, and how we all, as a nation, need to come together and wake the fuck up and do something about the blood, our blood, that's being shed. And so that's really what I want to emphasize here, because it's now more than ever, we need that seat at the table. We desperately need it. And we need it from a person who knows how it works at every single level and who can really offer these meaningful reforms. And we need a person who, as much as I hate to say it, for the next time and the time after that and the time after that, that this is going to happen again, that can be that person that speaks to us and understands what we need to hear and how to give us confidence. Because to be honest, if Black people go into November feeling like there's no point, this is going to keep happening over and over again, nobody's going to do a damn thing about it, that's not going to help in terms of the case and trying to beat Donald Trump. It's going to depress the vote, suppress the vote. And so we really, really need somebody who has the credibility to talk to our communities and let them know, yes, things are hard right now, but I will fight this battle with you with my seat at the table.
Amen. I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's so many factors right now that's actually trying to, influence voter suppression. And the problem that a lot of people are not understanding is that Black people are crying out just to be heard. Black people are crying out just to have their lives mean something, because it seems like everybody's devaluing our lives, our voice, our everything. It's just ridiculous. And The mere thing that we need right now is we need Joe Biden to understand that if he does not pick someone credible like Kamala Harris, who has a background in actually calling to action for justice for Black people, he does not have a shot in hell in this general election at all. If he does not go do those things and pick someone like Kamala Harris, to pick Kamala Harris particularly, we're probably going to lose this election. Do not make the same mistakes that Hillary did. Do not take our votes and our lives for granted. Right now, we want that seat at the table. Right now, we need someone who's going to speak to those issues, someone who's actually going to be able to understand the criminal justice system and how it works. Because a lot of people are completely misinformed when it comes to what roles are being played when it comes to criminal justice, what a DA does, what an attorney general does. Who do you call? Who's the person who actually called for, somebody to be tried for a crime? That was the DA's office. That's why a lot of people were confused with what was going on with George Floyd. They were confused. So who is supposed to actually arrest this person? Who's actually supposed to call for these people to be prosecuted? That was the DA. A lot of people don't know that. So what we need right now is someone who's actually able to talk to us, educate us on what our rights are and who do we call, what do we do, and what do we need to actually pursue in order to seek justice in America. Now, Maya, I know you have something to say about this, but I know you're just waiting.
I do. My head's been swimming all week with everything. To touch on a little bit what Drew was talking about, the autopsy report, the initial one that came out. As my friend Matthew Cortland said, he's a disability rights activist, and he said George, he's a disability rights activist. He's also a lawyer, and he said George Floyd's health, pre-existing conditions, have nothing to do with this. And legally speaking, to quote Matthew, it's bullshit. So that should not be there. And one of the things that's really frustrating to me, and one of the things that I'm always examining, is the language that's starting to surround what is happening. As I call it, so, I don't call it this, everybody does. They're circling the wagons, right? So now all of a sudden we need new talking points that the right wing can use to feel okay about what happened. We always know what they like to say. There's just a few bad apples. And I think that we saw that an old Chris Rock joke came out when he said, this doesn't work in any other industry. You don't say, well, that pilot, he's just a bad apple, right? You get the bad apples out of it. But not only that, you change the system of what is happening here. So what I'm hoping that happens right now is that we're going to have a real discussion right now. Again, Republicans like to say, it's not the time to politicize this. You can see Donald Trump trying to pull that bullshit too. Him trying to say, this dishonors George Floyd's death. Fuck you. I'm just going to say that. I don't want to hear that. It dishonors him to have Donald Trump talk about him out of his mouth, okay? So to me right now, what I want us to examine is the language that is starting to come out of this. People are going to start they're going to go into this coroner's report and say, you saw that they put it at 2 minutes. There's tape. We know it's longer than that. Okay, so they're going to say, well, it was only 2 minutes. You see that they try to chip away at what's happening, trying to make it less and less serious. They're trying to saying that this protests that are happening now, that somehow it is dishonoring all this. So I want all of us right now, and the people that are watching this, to start thinking about the language that they're using and how insidious it is and how it creeps into everything, because they're trying to make it less than, and it happens every time. And, a lot of people, when Kamala Harris came up with an anti-lynching bill, when Emmett Till's anti-lynching bill, they were saying, well, that just seems like we don't even need something like that. Well, we just saw public lynching. We just saw public execution. And this is why we had that piece of legislation in the first place. So to me right now, it is time to talk about, what does that mean? What does anti-racist legislation look like? And how do we all push for it at this time? And also on the counter end, and I'll finish up with this, who are the people that are fighting so hard against this legislation trying to get passed? We should be calling them out every time. And I think we all do a very good job at that. But we should be constantly calling out the people that are trying to push back against a murder that is completely traumatizing to all of us. And I will say a last thing, my heart goes out to the young woman that recorded it. And I know the PTSD. I have PTSD, I suffer from that. And I know that she's dealing with that right now. So I'm thinking about her right now.
Let me just say something real quick. I'm just probably gonna go off for a little bit, but this is just definitely needs to be said. I don't understand what those narratives are about, Maya, especially when they try to pivot to something else when it comes to the Black community. We've seen it in every case that we see. They always look for something to discredit that person's life and make them seem less than of a person. It just makes any sense. And they only do it when it comes to African Americans. They don't do it to the Boston Marathon bomber. They don't do it to any of these white militias. They don't do any of that to these white nationalist terrorists that actually attack our community. They always look, oh, well, they always sing these sad songs for them, but yet they look into our background to look for anything, small marijuana possession, anything like that, just to discredit us. And
I know why they do it. I just want you to say that. I don't want you to get off your point, but I just want to say that.
I know why.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is white male supremacy is not interested in equity, equal access, equal rights, civil rights, voting rights, anything that is going to take them off this idea that they are somehow hierarchically higher than us. Anything that will knock their profit off is a complete threat to them. They're trying to say and reverse the language and say we're threatening to them. No. They are threatening to us. They are threatened by the idea that we're pushing back on this idea that they're not hierarchically higher than us, that that hierarchy is total BS in the first place, and that we're messing with their profit. We're not messing with their profit. They're just mad that we are making profit, that we are. That they see. So I see why they're forming these things. The last thing I'll say about that is, these type of narratives have been going on for 155 years, longer than that, but I'm talking about since, I'm going to start it at 1865, because they started to recognize that once Black people were fought for the right to vote, got the right to vote, that all of a sudden you had 500,000 Black men who registered to vote. And they were like, oh, damn, are you saying you're really going to participate in the system? Oh, yes. And then 2,000 Black men were immediately elected in state houses and in the Congress. So they saw right away that this is threatening. This is so threatening. Oh, you're going to participate in this society that you built? Right? So this is why this is always threatening. And I want people to see that this type of narrative has not changed in 155 years. We just were sometimes tricked by it. Like, oh, we're a little bit, I mean, I was tricked when Obama got elected. I'm like, oh, things might be better.
No, things got worse.
I mean, I took a picture for my brunch that one day. Things are going to get better. I can do this. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay. He wasn't even in office for one day before they're disparaging him and his wife. So, sorry.
Exactly. They literally had, dummies of Barack Obama literally lynching him hypothetically outside their doors. Literally calling him a monkey. Yes, calling him a monkey. Literally, it was the Tea Party that was the Tea Party movement that actually started this. It's ridiculous. I don't necessarily know why they actually believe that this wouldn't have happened. Like, how long do you think that you can keep pushing and poking a bear before they actually bite back? And I mean, of course, they're going to keep trying to paint us out as villains. And it doesn't help being the fact that Donald Trump is tweeting out saying that if there's rioting, there's going to be shooting. He's literally threatening the American people. And if we don't do anything about it, I mean, it's funny that they want to call us, militias and say that we're gangs and thugs is what he calls us. But from the foundation of this nation was caused by the Boston Tea Party. But that was being patriotic. That was being revolutionary. But when Black people are literally fighting for their lives and trying to show you value in our lives and literally trying to get your attention, what else could we possibly do other than what's happening right now in Minnesota? But go ahead.
Thank you.
But I guess let's go ahead and get to the next topic, because I think we were talking about the COVID-19 and juvenile and women. Could you talk about that in the bail system for us, Drew?
Absolutely, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, man. Just moving in. I think one of the things that, especially when it comes to Kamala Harris, remember her original point to even becoming a prosecutor and getting involved in the system. Maya made the point of, oh, wait a minute, when Black men got the right to vote, wait, y'all really gonna vote? Oh, damn. Like, you know what I'm saying? Well, that logic behind that, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, is that you have to be working within the system, right? So your vote has to matter. If you're voting, you're within the system, working from the inside, reforming. something as small as a vote does that. Kamala Harris made the same thing as the reason why she became a prosecutor. One of the things that she decided to do was create a slew of reforms as it relates to today. Now in the midst of a pandemic, and you can kind of draw the line back, is that she's always worried about or concerned about the most vulnerable amongst us, notably children. She has a heart for younger people and children, especially younger people who may have messed up or made a mistake, as we all do as part of growing up. It's just some of us penalized more harshly than others, and affects the rest of our lives. So when it comes to Kamala Harris, I want to just explain how she's actually one of the senators that's pressing the Department of Justice to explain how they're protecting youth in juvenile detention facilities with regards to COVID-19. Obviously, when you're in detention centers, especially in juvie, as they call it, I've never been, but a lot of my friends have, you're unable to social distance. There's no type of 6 feet rule there. You are unable to use PPE. You can't self-isolate in those particular situations or in that particular setup. The majority of people locked up in there are Black and brown, just like the people right here on this particular panel. And so it's I'm sorry to say this, it's a wonderful breeding ground for COVID-19. It's you can just jump from place to place, and it puts everybody at just high risk. So the DOJ hasn't really responded yet, but a number of senators have, including Kamala Harris, are definitely pressing that. But that ties into Kamala. Again, her mind has always been about protecting children. I mean, if you go back to some of her most notable reforms, they were aimed at young people. Back on Track is the poster, the billboard, where it's 18 to 24-year-old young kids who have made first-time mistakes to be able to, have any low-level crimes thrown out, low-level convictions rather thrown out, and have other opportunities to move away so they don't have a record that affects the rest of their lives. You can talk about she co-founded the coalition to end the exploitation of kids, to provide legal and health services to sexually exploited children, including teenage exploited children. Back then they were called prostitutes, but you can't do that. You're not. I'm sorry, you're just a victim. You're not a prostitute if you're underage. You can think about the way she has even opposed Proposition 21, for instance, where it increased the variety of criminal penalties for criminals committed by youth and incorporated many youth offenders into the adult criminal justice system. That's what that was. She said, no, we're not retrying kids as adults. Again, so her mindset is always protecting the least of these. I keep bringing that up. That's just who she is, especially when it comes to juvenile detention. You have 488 youth and like 580 staff, something like that. I think at the beginning of this week that tested positive for COVID-19 so far. That's a lot. That's just what we know of. I can't even tell you what we don't know of. But again, those are controlled at the local level. As a senator, she's more at the federal level, but the DOJ still has to go ahead and answer for that. Another thing, bail reform. We talk about her ideas with bail reform as well, making sure that many people are not incarcerated or locked up simply because they can't afford bail. Okay, the bail prices are too high. You're sat there and locked up until your actual hearing. Sometimes that's days, weeks, months, or even years. First name that comes to my mind, rest his soul, Khalif Browder, who was locked up for 3 years without actually having his hearing. For 3 years, 2 of those he spent in solitary confinement. And obviously he's not the only story, but he's the one that the name, remember, he represents.
Sandra Bland as well. Sandra Bland was incarcerated over a traffic stop. And she was not able to get out because she did not have the bail money right away. So that's another example of how bail criminalizes you by socioeconomic status, by race, and can lead to death.
No, it absolutely does. Absolutely does. No, rest in peace to Sandra Bland as well. But again, when you're put in these vulnerable situations, particularly because of your skin color, we're more likely to be in those particular situations. You're much more vulnerable to, or in a pandemic as we find ourselves now. I think about even her reforms when it comes now, she's actually introduced something called the Equal Defense Act, which is also very notable because if you don't have money for bail, you probably don't have a living attorney or an attorney on hand for your home, for your house. So your focus is public defenders. And so with her Equal Defense Act, it really boosts the pay and resources, and it as well as limits the workload of public defenders. I was talking to Faith Jenkins, one of my good friends, And she was like, you got to respect public defenders. I mean, they're not bad people. It's just they're overworked and extremely under-resourced. It's not that they're incompetent. They're as good as any other lawyers you can find, but God, it's so much. And there's no way they can build a good defense for you to give you a fighting chance. So what happens is people end up taking plea deals, you end up doing time for things that you shouldn't even really be locked up. You should be, we see, having a good day. But you're doing that, again, you're in a more precarious situation because of your socioeconomic status. So our Equal Defense Act addresses that. It ensures quality access to legal defense. It ensures that public defenders I apologize. If you go back to 1963, rather, where U.S. Supreme Court Gideon versus Wainwright, matter of fact, that guarantees you the right to legal counsel. So with that, we want to make sure your legal counsel is actually supported. So what Kamala Harris's idea is, it's just with her Equal Defense Act, it actually creates $250 million to fund public defenses. It limits the workload for full-time public defenders. Thank God, because it's just hard. Pay parity between public defenders and also prosecutors, matter of fact, within 5 years. It also produces annual data on public defender workloads, including the number of hours they work per month and the percentage of work hours per month as well. Even authorizes a $5 million nonprofit and government organization to provide comprehensive training for public defenders. And I believe there's also, and you might correct me if I'm wrong, there's also something in there where it actually reauthorizes the student loan repayment program as well. And I believe it actually increases the overall authorization amount from like $25 million to $75 million as well. And as well as increases the per borrow repayment limit. So this is where her mind is. And actually, I do actually believe that is right. Yeah, it is. So the student loan prepay is part of that. But this is where her mind is. It's about Lisa Dees, who and from her background in criminal justice reform and her background in just understanding the system and people who are most vulnerable, it's people who are packed in tightly, and that's in our how I don't want to say incarceration system, but in the prison industrial complex.
I may just touch on what you said really fast, because one of the things when I'm trying to explain to people what anti-racist policies look like, what you just listed were a package of anti-racist policies that Kamala Harris has proposed. And when you talked about Khalif Browder, his death haunts me really seriously. His death and Eric Garner's death is a result of one massive racist policy, broken windows. Both of their deaths can be linked to the broken windows policy that's here in New York City. To me, I want people to understand how those policies are having such a wide stretch and how insidious they are. Khalif, if we didn't have that policy, I believe Khalif would still be alive today, as well as the bail aspect of it. So I really want to see how far ahead Kamala Harris is with the way she is attacking a system that is attacking us. I don't think people are able to put those dots together, and I hope that people can start seeing that these deaths that we're seeing, first of all, Khalif, died because of a backpack that he did not steal. He was totally innocent. He shouldn't have been in jail for that in the first place. And then for Eric Garner, it was over a Lucy cigarette, which is just a single cigarette. And then we obviously have Floyd, who they said, George Floyd, they said they're not even sure if he bounced a check. It should not matter, right? So I really hope that people can start seeing that the policies that Kamala are putting together, that anti-racist policies save lives. So I want people to make that connection as well. So thank you, Drew, for knowing those so well.
You mentioned something, but I heard this earlier today, and I've heard it before. They said Kamala Harris has the answer before most people have the question. So that's just how far ahead she is. I remember Lil Kim said, I'm 10 steps ahead of you. Like, that's where Kamala Harris is moving in that same. Again, I speak in rap lyrics, but I'm just saying, like, so if you want to know where she is, just look like way ahead. She's usually ahead of the pack. So far, so we see that now with the Trump tweet, Twitter thing. 7 months ago, she was at. Now everybody just not catching up. That's all you need to know.
And there was an article that I did a deep dive into. It was a 2004, maybe 2005 article. It was in the LA Times, and it was about Senator Kamala Harris, who was profiling her in her quest to become district attorney in her first year as district attorney. And it specifically labeled her a progressive prosecutor, which was not the buzzword that it is today. That's abused, used and abused and gentrified and weaponized as a cudgel against Black people who are not subjugated to people's preferred liberal lion. But anyway, but the reason why I wanted to bring that up was because specifically on the issue of juvenile confinement, that was one of the things when she, in her profile, this is 2004, she was talking about wanting to change the way that juvenile defenders, right, were treated by the system, change the solitary confinement, change the criminalization of them. And that is one of the things that she wishes she would have done more on, but she still has, and we're going to get into that a little bit more, a very extensive record on trying or advocating for reform, specifically in the area of juvenile reform, not just in terms of people in the system, in terms of for crimes, but for foster students, also for people who do actually have a record, and ensuring that they are not penalized for the rest of their life for something that they made as a juvenile.
That's right. Kamala Harris.
That was 2004. 2004.
Way before
2004. Not 2019, 2018, when you launched the campaign for president, 2004.
I was a senior in high school.
You throwing the whole tree at a whole bunch of progressives. Lord Jesus, Reecie.
I'm just saying.
Shade. That's the tree. The whole damn tree at their asses.
Contemporaneous reporting will tell the true story, because I don't see no 2004 articles with none of these other folks talking about the stuff that Kamala Harris talking about. Pull it up. I like to see it. Like Monique says, I like to see it because I can show it for Kamala Chair. I haven't seen it for nobody else.
You can't find it because nobody was talking about it. Kamala Harris has been way above her time when it comes to all of these things. They just getting on the curve right now. And Kamala Harris has been making sure that she's protecting the vulnerable. And one thing about a lot of people don't talk about is human trafficking. And Sydney, I already know you got everything to talk about when it comes to human trafficking.
Absolutely, Kenny, and thank you so much. So before we get started, I want to lead my segment off with a dedication to a Atlanta-based model by the name of Bridget Shield, a young lady who I recently learned about. And for those who are not familiar with her case, Bridget Shield in 2019 was found brutally murdered, stripped nude in the middle of a park in Atlanta, Georgia, with multiple bullet wounds to her back. Atlanta PD, when they discovered the body, said that the bullets that were used to kill Bridget Shield were some of the worst bullets that you can use on a human being on the market. And when they found her body, they suspected that she was actually attempting to escape an attempt of human trafficking. And for those who are not familiar with the industry of human trafficking here in the United States, human trafficking here in the U.S. is a $32 billion a year industry. It comes in revenue stream. It comes third behind in crime, I believe. Drug trafficking and white collar crime, I believe. That is the statistic there. And it involves the sale of bodies, typically for sexual acts. They could be indentured servants. It could be just basic chattel slavery. All of those notions would be categorized under the guise of human trafficking. And the case of Bridget Shield really stuck with me because she was a young woman looking to get into the music industry. I am looking to relocate to Atlanta, Georgia to continue my career in music. I'm a singer-songwriter. I'm involved with the same industry that she was in. I'm a DJ. And Bridget Shield could have easily been me at 19. I can remember being so excited to meet with, label execs and A&Rs and I was going to these events by myself a lot of the time. So that particular case stuck with me because it could have been me, it could have been my best friend, it could have been any of us. And time and time again, we see that these cases involving Black women victims of these particular crimes, whether that be, violent crime, murder, sexual abuse, police brutality, we see this time and time again that, these cases are being, left on the back burner. Black women are being told, now is not the time. We can, we can talk about, the cases of police brutality, but then when we bring up the cases of like, Breonna Taylor, for instance, we're constantly being told, well, Black women, we need you on the front lines to talk about, the Black community. But when it comes to advocating for yourselves, now is not the time. And the one thing that, stuck out to me about Kamala Harris's work as AG is the fact that, she never told Black women that now is not the time. She was very, she dealt in duality in a lot of her, in a lot of her work. She understands that, that there are a lot of cases where, that are unfair, that, involve innocent, Black women and men. And, she pushed strongly for those particular criminal justice reforms, but she also worked as a voice for the victims, because when it comes to cases like this in particular, Black women are often given a very hard ultimatum and a hard choice to make. In a lot of cases, Black women don't have any advocates when it comes to the unique abuses that we face within our community. We cannot call the police because we fear that the police will either kill us or our partners. But our partners don't necessarily understand, especially when we do partner with other Black people, the particular unique danger that, we face when we're not able to seek out help for the abuses that we face. And there isn't enough conversation, in my opinion, being had about the unique ways in which Black women face this kind of violence. And that is exactly what Kamala Harris set out to do. Black women are absolutely not only victim sex trafficking, but Kamala made it a point to look at the research and understand that there are many Black women that are involved in sex trafficking. As Attorney General, she sponsored, a human trafficking bill, Assembly Bill 2466, that prevented those involved with human trafficking to not be able to receive assets from, the sale of other human beings. Attorney General Harris, at the time, committed herself to combating human trafficking through the California Alliance to Combat Trafficking and Slavery Task Force. So what that says to me is that Kamala Harris has a particular vision, or I say for these particular through the cracks. With racism and patriarchy coming intersecting, what happens is that you often view these crimes as victimless, and we talk a lot about racism, but we also don't talk about the ways in which patriarchy creates victims out of innocent Black women. And Kamala Harris stood for those particular victims. She made it a point to point out the unique ways in which Black women are targeted due to poverty and inequality. Black women receive less money on the dollar than white women and men, which puts us at higher risk to fall into these lines of work, such as sex work, and it puts us at higher risk for sex trafficking, because when people can't put food on the table, desperate times call for desperate measures. And I have plenty of friends who have been in these particular situations where they can't get a job because of discrimination, or they can't get a job because of lack of education or lack of money, and they turn to to desperate means to make money. And what ultimately ends up happening is that they become victims in ways that they never thought. And we could see this with the Centoya Brown case. She was a victim of sex trafficking, and she decided to do something about that to change the trajectory of her life. And she was a victim of trauma, and the criminal justice system rewarded her with a life sentence, instead of looking at the perpetrator in the situation and saying, this is a person who is a victim of sex trafficking. We need to look at ways of helping this person deal with this trauma. And that is exactly what Kamala Harris has done throughout her work, and not just as a senator, but as a district attorney and attorney general. So with that being said, we see here that Kamala understands what it means to not just be a victim of the system, but also a victim of crimes that are considered victimless crimes. And time and time again, we come to a crossroads where we're not sure what we can do. We can't reach out for help from the police because the police will victimize us, but we also can't take the law into our own hands because we'll end up in the system. And that has led to a lot of carnage and a lot of death for young Black women. A lot of young Black women's lives have been cut short prematurely because we're not able to handle these situations. And we're not able to ask for help and, or get help for our abusers. And even Kamala Harris has, looked into, what creates an abuser. And she wants, and she has pushed forth legislation to mitigate it before someone is involved in pimping or sex trafficking. She's looking at all of those things in a full picture. And I say that this is a unique experience for Black women because we see time and time again that, that these occurrences happen when inequality is so vast within a community. When you have a community that is put against its strengths, put against its ropes, you see time and time again that desperate times call for desperate measures, and people will do what they have to do to survive. That's not necessarily happening to women who are white, women who but it is happening to women who are of color, and not just Black women, because again, we are dealing with an insurmountable amount of inequality in our communities. And Kamala Harris she understands that unique experience that we have. And again, this is why it is important to have progressive prosecutors who understand that every crime isn't a victimless crime. And with that being said, again, rest in peace, Bridget Shield, and to all of the young women who have lost their lives to abuse, to domestic violence, to gun violence. My heart goes out to you all, and I know that Kamala Harris also feels the same way, and that helps me sleep at night.
Thank you, Sydney. I just pulled up a statistic on sex trafficking so that people can understand, especially the group that says Kamala Harris, all kinfolk and kinfolk group. I just want to put this in a better perspective for you and show you the vast disparities when it comes to the sex trafficking. It shows that 77% of victims that were in human trafficking were people of color. So that's a disproportion. That's the majority. That means pretty much most of these people who were involved in sex trafficking were people of color, Black people. So y'all need to understand, Kamala Harris has been fighting for us, trying to give us a voice, trying to protect us, because Black people are the most vulnerable group in America, especially right now, especially in history as it's shown. And
thank you.
Kamala Harris has a record of actually doing things and making sure that we're protected. And since we're talking about Kamala Harris's record, Reecie, the Miss Encyclopedia of Kamala Harris, could you talk about a little bit of Kamala Harris record? I know you can go for days about it, but try to sum it up for us in 5 or less minutes.
I am the encyclopedia jail. I'm the encyclopedia on the bullshit, and I'm the encyclopedia on the real shit. So we're gonna talk about the real shit right now, because that's what we need to do. I already see people starting with the but Kamala. Ain't no but Kamala. If we're gonna talk about but Kamala, let's talk about how but Kamala actually had receipts, how but Kamala actually has solutions. But Kamala actually has decades of advocacy and accomplishments in criminal justice. So if we're gonna do the but Kamala stuff, then let's do the real but Kamala stuff. And so I think, as you all have mentioned, a lot of different things that Kamala Harris has worked on. Senator Kamala Harris. People want to say Kamala is a cop. Kamala is a sitting U.S. senator, only the second Black woman to hold such an esteemed position. She was Attorney General, and that's an executive position. Be clear. It's an executive. And she was district attorney, another executive position. And I wasn't originally planning on doing this, but I do think that it's important to really drive home the point of the expansiveness of Senator Kamala Harris's record in the area of criminal justice. Because if you let people talk about it, you would think she didn't do nothing. But I put together last year, actually, I had put together a thread on her Senate record. I put together a 2-part thread on her AG record. But I put together, after she released her criminal justice reform plan, which was an excellent, extensive plan, I put together a Medium post. Actually, it was a thread and that turned into a Medium post. 50 criminal justice accomplishments / reforms implemented or advocated for by Kamala Harris. Be clear, it is impossible for anybody, even a strong Black woman and South Asian woman like Kamala Harris, to unilaterally and autonomously accomplish criminal justice reform like that. It's not going to happen. Okay. But she tried her damnedest and she's still working on it, as Drew talked about some of her initiatives in the age of COVID. And not only does she put forth things, but she also raises awareness about things. I remember, I don't know if you guys watched her impeachment speech where she talked about her vote for impeaching Donald Trump. She talked about the 2 different systems of justice in America. So this isn't just something that happens when Black people get gunned down or Black people get murdered by the police. She talks about 2 systems of justice. She talks about it even when we're talking about the president, y'all's president, who's out there committing crimes. But I do want to just rattle off this list, and forgive me, y'all, this might take a second. I have never read this list out loud before, but I do want to really explain to you guys so that you just really understand. There are specific measures that Senator Kamala Harris has taken since she stepped into the deputy DA position at Alameda County, advocating, as Sydney said, for sexual assault victims, advocating for human trafficking victims and things of that nature. And even up until being a senator, sending out letters just this week about juvenile detention and things of that nature. So let me take a sip right quick. Hold on, Chad, because my throat is dry.
Everybody take a sip, y'all. It's going to be a long ride, okay?
I'm going to try to, I can talk really fast, so I'm going to try, and I'm going to use up all my little minutes on this. And I'm submitting this without any additional commentary. You can go to this Medium post. You can go to my page. Actually, you can go to Google, 50 criminal justice, Kamala Harris. All you got to put in, just those words, and this post will come up first thing. Which, by the way, I hope Kamala Harris' team works on her SEO, her Google optimization. They're doing a lot better on a lot of things, Share, but go ahead and get that Google optimization up. So, 50 criminal justice accomplishments / reforms implemented, advocated for by Kamala Harris. She's not new to this. She's true to this. Number 1, as deputy DA, she opposed Proposition 21, which passed, unfortunately, which increased a variety of criminal penalties for crimes committed by youth and incorporated many youth offenders into the adult criminal justice system. Deputy DA, she co-founded the coalition to end the exploitation of kids, to provide legal and health services to sexually exploited children, including teenage prostitutes. As a member of the board of trustees at the San Francisco MoMA, Kamala used her position on the board to create a matches program which paired at-risk youth with mentors in order to expose them to art and broaden their horizons. The program was the first of its kind in the United States. As DA, San Francisco, the first Black woman, the first Black person, the first woman of South Asian descent to be elected to that position in the history of San Francisco, created, I know I said I wasn't going to editorialize, but I can't help it yet. Created Back on Track reentry program as San Francisco DA. Let me mute somebody. I'm getting a feedback. Okay. To help drug offenders re-enter society. She provided them with vocational training, counseling, parenting services, etc., successfully substantially reduced recidivism. Google that if you don't know what that means. Refused to seek the death penalty even when pressured by members of her own party due to racial disparities in how it's applied against a person who killed a cop. That takes courage. Created the LGBTQ hate crime unit. She worked as DA, she worked to get the first safe house in San Francisco for girls who wanted out of the sex trade, human trafficking again. She changed the treatment of underage women / men from being treated as prostitutes and criminals to being treated, again, human trafficking, as DA of San Francisco. As DA and spilling over into Attorney General, she helped found the Center for Youth Wellness, which works to improve health of children exposed to childhood trauma. We only up to number 9. I'm sorry, Chad. It's a lot of stuff. As number 10, as AG, she created the Bureau of Children's Justice, the first of its kind. Number 11, AG, BCJ, that's the Bureau of Children's Justice. If you can't retain, number 10, partnered with Children's Network of USC to link data from the DOJ's automated criminal history system and California Department of Social Services case management system. The link enabled researchers for the first time to accurately determine the overlap between child welfare and juvenile justice populations. Number 12, BCJ worked to diagnose challenges in California's juvenile justice data system in partnership with the governance lab at New York University. NYU, shout out to Maya, that's you, right? Number 13, AG. BCJ, Bureau of Children's Justice, again, worked to deliver previously unavailable juvenile justice data from the Juvenile Court Probational Statistical System to researchers at Public Policy Institute of California, Harvard University, University of Chicago, and the University of California at Berkeley. Number 14, BCJ worked to collaborate with the Judicial Council to develop dashboards for judges to make better decisions about adjudicated juveniles. Number 15, awarded the Second Chance Grant to expand her Back on Track program to Los Angeles as Attorney General. Number 16, as Attorney General, created the Division of Recidivism, Reduction, and Reentry, DR3, to reduce the number of repeat offenders. DR3, Division of Recidivism, Reduction, and Reentry, partnered with Court to College CTC, C2C, the collaborative, it was DR3, LA Superior Court DA and the Public Defender and the Probation Department and Cerritos Community College is a program designed to divert young offenders from engaging in future criminal behavior through cognitive behavioral intervention and exposure to higher educational opportunities. Number 18, DR3 partnered with the LA community-based organization Friends Outside, the LA Community County Probation Department, LA Trade Tech College, etc., on the Career Pathways program. This program is an out-of-custody recidivism reduction program that provides resources to a probation supervised population. The program offers assistance to those who face employment barriers such as limited education and or work history. Number 19, California DOJ, which, by the way, $700 million operating budget, 4,500 employees, multiple divisions. It's not a cop department. There are things about, consumer protections, all kinds of things. It's not, people just think that the AG is just another prosecutorial unit. It's not. But anyways, we're talking about criminal justice though. So let me get back to that. Kamala's California DOJ was accepted by the United States DOJ. This is under the Obama administration, to be part of its National Defending Childhood State Policy Initiative. That initiative brings together a cross-sector team of state agencies, leaders to develop shared priorities and prevent and address children's exposure to violence. She created the truancy intervention panel to implement best practices for truancy prevention. Be clear, truancy has been a crime in the state of California since the 1970s. Okay, and even the hit pieces about Senator Kamala Harris's record, which we'll get to later, about truancy, acknowledge that even the toughest counties that prosecuted truancy reduced meaning went down on their prosecutions of truancy. Be very clear about that. Don't believe what you heard. Let's talk about the facts. BCJ formed a partnership with the Ad Council and the California Endowment, conducted a study regarding parental misunderstandings about the impact of elementary school absences on children's academic achievement and likelihood of graduating. The study led to a public education campaign and toolkit designed to help educators and community leaders communicate more effectively with parents on the importance of children being in school on time every day. As AG, she created Smart Justice, a new database and analytical tool to track repeat offenders and offense trends to provide counties with more effective options in developing anti-recidivism initiatives. Number 23, as AG, issued guidance to California law enforcement agencies outlining new responsibilities to track and report citizen complaints against peace officers, that's the POPO, the police, including alleging racial and identity profiling. As AG, supported AB 71, which became law, requiring all California law enforcement agencies to collect data on incidents involving the shooting of a civilian by a peace officer, the POPO, the shooting of a peace officer by a civilian, as well as data on incidents involving use of force by a civilian / peace officer against the other that result in serious bodily injury or death. As AG created the first Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, POST for short, certified law enforcement training on both procedural justice and implicit bias, the first of its kind in the country. As AG initiated number 26 and instituted a body policy camera for all DOJ special agent personnel conducting field operations. As AG number 27 convened law enforcement, youth, and community organizations. This is where we get into the community policing aspect of her record. Number 28, created the 21st Century Policing Working Group to foster discussion and initiatives and solutions regarding implicit bias in building community trust. This is community policing again. Number 29, created Open Justice, a first of its kind criminal justice open data initiative, providing unprecedented data while being interactive and easy to use. This tool spotlights key criminal justice indicators and embraces transparency in the criminal justice system to strengthen trust, enhance government accountability, and inform public policy. Number 30, opened a pattern and practice investigation into the Kern County Sheriff's Office, opened a civil pattern and practice investigation into the Bakersfield Police Department. These are the two deadliest counties or police departments for police shootings under her while she was AG. Be clear, Kamala Harris as Attorney General was not responsible for prosecuting or investigating police shootings. That responsibility falls under the district attorneys. Be very clear about that. Number 32, as AG, she convened the Racial Profiling Advisory Board. Number 33, she issued guidance outlining the law enforcement agents' responsibilities to assist immigrant crime victims and applying for U visas. Number 34, she enlisted major law firms to provide pro bono legal services to address the humanitarian crisis of unaccompanied children entering the U.S. She also supported legislation to provide $3 million to qualified California nonprofits to provide legal aid for these children. So be clear, when Donald Trump is putting kids in cages, when you have this unaccompanied minor issue where Donald Trump just wants to send them back before this even happened, Senator Kamala Harris was fighting for these children. It's not just about people who sit up there and introduce bills or give speeches or write letters. It's about the receipts, and Kamala Harris has that. Number 35, sponsored a bill that allows human trafficking victims, to Sydney's point, to petition court to set aside a conviction of solicitation prostitution. So this is, again, changing the way that sex trafficking, human trafficking victims are viewed, like Centoya Brown. They're not viewed as prostitutes, they're viewed as victims, which is what they are. As AG, eliminated the rape kit backlog and significantly reduced processing times. Number 37, sponsored AB 1644 that would have established a 4-year pilot program to assist elementary schools in providing mental health services to students, prioritizing schools and communities with high levels of childhood trauma and adversity. That was part of her presidential platform. Be clear, not everything is going to pass because this is not a dictatorship. She is not autonomously empowered to do these things, but it's important to note that she talked about these things before a presidential campaign, before a PDF trial. She was already working on these things, and there's proof of that. I'm getting closer. 38. Senate Bill 1143. Okay, well, that's as AG still, she supported Senate Bill 1143 to significantly limit the practice of isolating juveniles in room confinement. So again, here we go to the juvenile, offenders. Number 39, supported AB 1840 to require that state agencies give preference to homeless youth and formerly incarcerated youth when hiring interns and student assistants. I don't know of anybody. I don't know, y'all can raise your hand if you know of somebody else that's been advocating on that inside of this beef sticks or even inside the presidency or the presidential campaign. I don't know of anybody, period.
I know Kamala did it.
Kamala, other than Kamala, period. I challenge somebody to tell me and find me that specific type of advocacy. Anyways, I said I wasn't going to editorialize. 39. No, okay, I'm on 40, sorry. Supported AB 2390 to provide a legislative fix to 2010 legislation that inadvertently removed a mechanism for juvenile offenders with good records on supervised probation to obtain honorable discharge status. Number 41, supported AB 1843 to protect young people from being subjected to inquiry during the hiring process about arrests or detentions that did not lead to juvenile adjudications, arrests for which juveniles have completed probation programs or records that has either ordered sealed or have been sealed automatically. Receipts. Now, I done got through the AG part. Be clear, the first 41 focused on AG and DA. I have so many more receipts from her time as DA that I didn't even have at the time of this. Okay, I found more research that would have allowed me to make this probably even 100 criminal justice things. But again, and just to make a quick another note, Amy Klobuchar, according to reports, actually increased her emphasis on juvenile offenders while she was district attorney. So don't take it for granted. I know people listen to this stuff, and people now in 2020 like to sit up here and act like all this stuff was given. Oh, well, everybody was doing that. That's not true. Look at Amy Klobuchar. Everybody was not doing that. Okay. Even some of these progressives that people like to call out, they are fashioned after Kamala Harris. When people want to talk about, oh, you want to hold up these progressives, and shout out to them, particularly the Black women. Shout out to Marilyn Mosby. Shout out to Kim Foxx in Chicago. But be clear, when you want to talk about, well, Kim Foxx came in on the heels of the Laquan McDonald shooting and Anita Alvarez not taking action, who was the person that served on Kim Foxx's transition team? Kamala Harris. When Marilyn Mosby took that action that was smeared by this sorry ass Hennepin County district attorney that they have right now, saying that she rushed to judgment. And I don't know if y'all read an article on how much hell they put Marilyn Mosby through, but who stood with Marilyn Mosby in her re-election fight, fundraising for her and stumping for her? Kamala Harris. That is who her mentor is. All right. And so she doesn't get the credit that she deserves, but be clear, a lot of these people that y'all like to give credit for are fashioned after or mentored by the Senator Kamala Harris. But let's move on to her Senate record. All right, I'm almost wrapping this up. 42. And keep in mind, this was October 2019. So like I said, I got more Senate receipts and I got more DA receipts, but I'm gonna go ahead.
Reecie with the receipts, y'all.
Listen, I'm about to wrap it up. I know I've been talking a long time, but I just want you, those of you who are watching, I really want you to understand, because they don't talk about any of these things. Maybe you'll hear it back on track, but you're not going to hear any of these things. And all of these things are very public record. And so I want you watching to be empowered, and I want you to be assured, because you have every reason to be assured by Senator Kamala Harris's record. People can have these vague comments. Oh, well, her record is this, her record is that. No, her record is proof as to why she needs to be that seat at the table, period. But let me go ahead and get back to this list. I'm almost done. 42. As senator, she reintroduced, along with colleagues, the National Criminal Justice Commission Act, legislation that would create a National Criminal Justice Commission to review the criminal justice system from top to bottom and propose reforms to address the most pressing issues facing the nation's criminal justice system. Number 43, sponsor comprehensive marijuana legislation that would legalize marijuana, expunge prior convictions, and require resentencing hearings for those still under supervision, and invest monies in communities adversely impacted by the war on drugs. That was the MORE Act, which has advanced. The MORE Act has advanced in the House, through the leadership of Congressman Jerry Nadler. Sponsored legislation, as Drew talked about earlier, to end the use of cash bail. That was bipartisan work with Rand Paul. As sorry as his ass is, even he co-sponsored the legislation along with Kamala Harris. Number 45, sponsored legislation to increase funding for public defenders, reduce their workload, and provide pay parity between prosecutors and public defenders. That's the Equal Act that Drew referenced earlier. She introduced legislation number 46 to limit the use of solitary confinement, the Solitary Confinement Reform Act. Number 47, she sponsored legislation to end discrimination in public housing for offenders. years released from prison. Number 48, sponsored legislation to reform how the federal prison system treats incarcerated women in order to reduce the negative impact incarceration has on the family members of women behind bars, especially their children, and better prepare incarcerated women to return to their communities. Number 49, sponsored legislation to establish the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. The commission will investigate, provide recommendations to improve potential civil rights violations affecting Black males and study the disparities they experience in educational, criminal justice, health, employment, fatherhood, mentorship, and violence. And number 50, last but not least, and certainly not last in her record, but last on this list that I put together in October 2019, worked with the civil rights groups like the NAACP Legal Defense Fund to strengthen the First Step Act. So that was long, but it's long and still not even all encompassing. And Senator Kamala Harris's leadership in calling for pattern practices investigations in the case of Ahmaud Arbery, in the case of George Floyd, in the case of Breonna Taylor, and actually getting some success with that, because even William Barr, sorry ass DOJ, has announced that they are launching these investigations. And I know some people say, well, it's Barr's DOJ, do you really trust it? These investigations do take a long amount of time. They will not be wrapped up before the next administration, which hopefully is not goddamn Donald Trump again. And so it is important that these types of things get underway, particularly in the time where they are still collecting evidence and things of that nature. And so, like I said, you can be assured that with Senator Kamala Harris in that seat at the table, she has the experience. She's thought about a wide variety of issues. She's acted on these things. Can she accomplish everything? No, because the system is entrenched. White supremacy is entrenched. Systemic racism is entrenched. Institutionalized racism is entrenched. It's entrenched in our society, but you know what? She got in there and did the work, and ain't nobody gonna take that from her. And we're gonna talk about her record. We're gonna talk about the facts that nobody else even comes close to. And on that, I'm done.
Lord Jesus, take a sip. Oh my goodness, but that's a hand clap right there. That was a lot, but there was so much meat in everything that she was saying. Okay, because yes, that's the encyclopedia, everybody. But when it comes to, there's a few things that she kind of covered that I wanted to address that I don't think I have to, thanks to Reecie, because Reecie she ate my whole sheet. But there was some things that I want to expand on when it comes to debunking a lot of these lies, especially when it comes to Kamala Harris's record. When it comes to, Kamala Harris has been known to opposing the death penalty. That's been known. But a lot of people wanted to say that Kamala Harris was defending the death penalty. Let me go ahead and check y'all asses real quick. When it came to defending the death penalty, what Kamala Harris was basically trying to tell people and try to understand is that in California, they were trying to argue to the mere fact of it's taking too long to execute these prisoners. That's what Kamala Harris was arguing about. What they wanted to do is push the date, the death day, if you will. And Kamala Harris was fighting, saying, no, there's a system for this. We have to literally we have to give these people their just due. So Kamala Harris was pretty much she wasn't defending killing these people. She was defending the fact that these people need more time. What if they had an appeal? What if they wanted to fight? But you're trying to push up their death date because it's costing the state too much money? That's what Kamala Harris was defending. And for anybody who's still pushing that legislation, let them know that Kamala Harris was not trying to kill anyone on death row. She was actually saving people's lives. Number two, when it came to the Back on Track program, literally when Kamala Harris first started as DA, her marijuana admissions were 817. Throughout her last year, it dropped to 137. That's a free fall. That's impossible. So for some people who are saying Kamala Harris prosecuted marijuana, she never did that. Even in her early days, she only, and her main goal was child sexual assault charges. That's pretty much been her whole entire career, is protecting the most vulnerable. She never specialized in any marijuana convictions. That's number two. All right, number three, when it comes to truancy, it's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of people saying, oh, Kamala Harris locked up people. She knocked on the doors and arrested parents and all this other stuff. Nothing. No, never. It's DA of San Francisco. Not one person was ever arrested under Kamala Harris's administration. So I don't understand where you guys are coming from when it comes to that. And even with truancy, you had to literally your child had to miss 50 days for just to get a citation, let alone a damn arrest. So that's number 3. When it comes to, specializing in hate crimes unit, Kamala Harris has actually been a proponent when it comes to protecting trans and gay people. She actually helped to end the trans and gay panic defense. And that's still just as DA. And what a lot of people aren't understanding is what the hell is a DA and what the hell do they do? Well, I went ahead and Googled it for y'all asses, and I'm going to read out the definition. So, district attorneys have the power to choose which charges to file against an individual accused for a crime. When police are arresting someone, the district attorney's office has the power to prosecute those cases, divert the accused to programs or drug treatment, like Back on Track program, or dismiss the cases altogether. And Kamala Harris did just that. She created so many initiatives, and she was trying to create the same thing with the truancy program, is a divergent to actually do crime prevention, getting it from the root, because 80% of people who are incarcerated are high school dropouts. And Kamala Harris knew that from the data and decided to do something about it. Because one thing that you have to understand is when it comes to children, particularly, that they're the most vulnerable when it comes to being able to actually, be put into horrible situations. And the other thing about that is, for parents not allowing their children to go to school and not knowing where they are, that is just called child neglect, period. And a lot of people, as growing up, we already understand that your child is more likely, if they do not go to school, they're more likely to end up dead or in prison. So Kamala Harris understood that, and she decided to do something about it. One thing about Kamala Harris is she just doesn't just talk, she has to act. And she's been doing that her entire career. Number 2, a lot of people are talking about, attorney generals. As Reecie already said, attorney generals do not call for the conviction of police officers when it comes to unarmed Black men being killed. That's not attorney general's job. Attorney general is pretty much the state's lawyer. And what they basically do, which I got the definition again, for the uneducated, states attorney generals enforce both states and federal laws because they're sworn to uphold the United States Constitution and laws as well as states. So, you got a question, Maya?
I can't put up my hand. I tried. No, I wanted to chime in when you were done. Please continue. I will chime in afterwards.
That's pretty much it, because I'll have more on, attorney general, but Reecie kind of ate up all of my talking points. But the one thing I think that she did mention is Kamala Harris did do something and got props from one of the progressives that a lot of people are pushing right now. She was able to come up with the biggest settlement in U.S. history, which is 25 billion settlements for California homeowners, especially during the foreclosure crisis. And even Elizabeth Warren herself even quoted saying that Kamala Harris was fearless in actually tackling this. So for you Warren supporters who have a problem, Kamala Harris got props for Miss Girl. So Maya, I'll let you go ahead and take over.
I just want to help a couple people out who they try to pin Fosta Cessna completely on Kamala Harris, saying that she was basically against sex workers. That is just untrue. I want people to understand. I have friends that are sex workers. One, I have met with people that are sex workers. I have talked to them about working on policy, and how does that get passed? How does sex decrim get passed? So I want everyone to understand that Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, your favorite white progressives also voted in favor of Fosta Cessna. Okay, so I need people to, why did Kamala only get the blowback? I don't know why, but she did. So, exactly, I know, that's rhetorical. So I want to clear that up. Two, Kamala Harris also said that she is definitely into exploring the avenues of decrim, and that she supports that avenue. One of the things that I want people to understand before I pass it off to Reecie is that when people are talking about policy, and as Reecie said before, this is not a dictatorship. You can't just throw something out there. I had sex workers saying to me in New York City, like, how come like city council can't just pass this? And I go, city council's not in charge of that. They can only do aspects of that policy. They can help provide lawyers' fees, or they can do things like that. But that's not how that works. So I think what happens is a lot of people get frustrated because they're not understanding how this policy works. When Kamala Harris was supporting this bill, it's because she's trying to stop children from being trafficked. And yes, there are already laws in place that are supposed to be preventing that, but sometimes those laws aren't always paid attention to. So she was trying to add an extra barrier there right away. And I know that people are frustrated about the back page situation, but when people are examining policies and when they're looking at Kamala Harris, I want people to know that she is thinking about it. But this is something that you have to try to thread the needle on. It's a very complicated situation, as is all policy. The people that try to sell you on policy in bumper sticker form, that's just not how it is. There's usually something else that's attached to it, because you want to keep sex workers safe, and you want to make sure that they're not getting thrown into jail for consensual work. And we should have decriminalization. But we also have to look at all the other things that are going on around it, because we don't want sex trafficking to happen as well. So I want people to understand that Kamala Harris does understand that. And I'm passing off to Reecie.
Kenny, did you want to add anything else? Thanks, Maya, on that. I really appreciate that clarification. Before I get started. I'm not going to say a lot this time, though. I'm not going to say a lot. But go ahead if you want to say something.
Woo. But anyways, no, I don't really have anything else to add, at least in terms of that. The only thing I wanted to add is with disinformation. Is you guys have to, I'm just going to talk to my Black people, y'all. We got to really just come to, we got to come to Jesus when it comes to this, okay? With disinformation, the whole reason why they attacked Kamala Harris, why she got 63% of negative attacks online. Reason why, because she is the biggest threat to DOJ. She is literally the biggest threat to Donald Trump. That was period. They only focused on her. It's weird that, well, it's not weird at all. It was calculated why there were so many misinformation pieces coming out at the same exact time Kamala Harris decided to announce her candidacy. What they wanted to do, and this was not to gain the Black vote, it was to suppress the Black vote. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to paint out somebody who has been a champion when it comes to protecting African Americans, when it comes to protecting people of color and those who are most vulnerable, like Kamala Harris, to try to stop you and persuade you to not vote or turn out or support this woman. And that's just literally the end of it. That's no conspiracy theory. It shows in everything that you see. I never saw a candidate be attacked from MAGA, Bernie Bros, Rose Twitter. I've never seen this level of attacks in my life from all different places besides with Hillary Clinton. But Kamala Harris was pretty much that times 10. And she had no help from media. She had no name recognition before the start of this campaign. So for those who are saying, well, Kamala Harris didn't make it California, she didn't have support, we don't necessarily know what Kamala Harris would have done, because Kamala Harris was so adamant about not taking PAC money like other people that she would rather drop out and pay her staff a month in advance than actually go against what she said that she was going to do. Kamala Harris is about what she says. She doesn't walk, she doesn't just talk what she says. She walks it in stiletto heels, y'all. Don't play no games with Kamala, period, okay? Kamala Harris is the truth. And we really missed out, and Black people really need to understand what's going on. This is called divide and conquer. And they know exactly how to attack us, and they know exactly which heartstrings to pull at when it comes to stopping Black people to vote. And it's always based off of race. And don't ever in your life ever question the legitimacy of Kamala Harris being a strong Black woman, period. And if you got problems, you can meet me in the DMs, or you go see me on Instagram, because I will debate your ass and meet you at your doorstep. Don't play no games, okay? That's all I had to say, Reecie. Carry on.
I echo you, Kenny. I will debate anybody. I posed that offer to Killer Mike during the primaries because he was slandering Kamala. And Roland Martin offered to host that debate, and Killer Mike was bird boxing. He was off Twitter that whole day. All day. He acted like he didn't see it. But, you know, I originally thought, okay, I was going to kind of address some of these smears, and I think that there is still a time and place for that. But I think what will be more effective in this time, and I'm not going to take a lot of time like I did last time, jail. But I do want to just kind of really explain to you all the specific duties that Senator Kamala Harris had as district attorney and as attorney general. It's very high level, but let's be clear. Senator Kamala Harris, again, I'm going to repeat this, made history as the first woman, the first Black person, and the first South Asian person elected to the San Francisco district attorney. That happened in 2004. She served until 2010 when she was elected as attorney general. She was the first Black woman elected as DA in the entire state of California. As district attorney, because a lot of people don't understand that. People think that the district attorney is like, you know, the chick in the courtroom prosecuting OJ.
No.
Instead of understanding that, you know, I don't know, maybe y'all didn't watch Law and Order like I did. I watched Law and Order, okay? No. Wasn't it Adam Schiff, the man who was in the nice chair? He always had the cherry, nice cherry office furniture, the big office, and he just kind of was like the overseer of things, but he wasn't really all in the weeds like that. That's what the DA does. So she was the executive leader, and that's something that does distinguish her from other people that are in these deep stakes, of over 300 staff consisting of prosecutors, victim advocates, paralegals, and other support staff with an operating budget of over $30 million. Under her tenure, the office contained 4 major divisions. There was the Criminal Division, the Investigations Bureau, the Special Operations Division, and the Victim Services Division. The Criminal Division alone filed over 20,000 cases, 8,000 felony and 12,000 misdemeanors. Does that mean that she was out there rounding up people? No, because if you understand these crime statistics in this country, then you understand that a vast majority of the cases never actually make it to any kind of arrest or prosecution. A year, so I said 20,000 cases that were filed, right? But that's compared to 66,000 violent property and larceny theft crimes a year. So obviously Kamala Harris would not been involved in every court proceeding or charging decision. Ain't nobody got time for that. Y'all don't even read all your emails that you get every day. I know I probably got 200 unread emails in my inbox, child. I get CC'd on everything. I don't open it. I ain't got time for it. So if you are an executive and you are over 300 people and you got operating a budget of 30 million, you're not involved in every case like that. Be clear. Now let's move on to the Attorney General. The Attorney General is the executive leader of the California Department of Justice, the largest state Department of Justice, only second behind the U.S. Department of Justice. She had a staff of over 4,800 employees, including over 1,000 attorneys, and an operating budget of over $750 million. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, she reorganized the California Department of Justice into 4 divisions. And I'm going to tell you how those divisions were allocated so that you can understand the swath of things that the California Department of Justice handled. 35% was legal services. The Division of Law Enforcement was 22%. The California Information Services is 23%, and the Directorate and Administration is 20%. The Civil and Criminal Law Division caseloads averaged 20,000 to 30,000 caseloads. Okay, so obviously, again, 1,000 employees, 20,000 to 30,000 cases just in the Civil and Criminal Law Division. Kamala Harris is not involved in every court filing. She's not involved in adjudicating every decision, period. And so if that is not enough to explain to you when people want to cherry pick, it's 40 million people in the state. It's thousands, tens of thousands of crimes and cases a year. Anybody can cherry pick a case. We're not talking about Amy Klobuchar, who had jurisdiction over very specific cases. Obviously, these would have been higher profile cases when it involves a police shooting somebody and killing them, who punted to the grand jury. Again, there is no such comparable case for Kamala Harris. It does not exist. That did not happen. We're talking about a woman who was an executive that had a broad portfolio, managed it well. I went through 50 criminal justice reforms and accomplishments. That's just a criminal justice record. You can go to my Medium page. It's not for my promotion. I don't get paid off of it, but I did document in great detail her record as AG that expands far beyond her criminal justice record, her record as a senator as well. So her record is above reproach, in my opinion. I'm very happy to debate anybody who even tries to come at her with the smears instead of the innuendos and trying to make a connection there that isn't really a connection except for a very, very high level connection. If somebody crashes their Hyundai and the doggone what is it called, airbag doesn't deploy, you don't go call up the CEO of Hyundai and be like, oh, you messed up. That ain't how that works. So keep that same understanding when we're talking about an executive of the largest department of justice. So there's going to be a time, like I said, when we might have to tackle these more specific smears, and I have a lot of receipts on those as well. But I just wanted you guys to understand the portfolio, I'm going to call it a portfolio, of responsibility that Senator Kamala Harris had as both DA and as Attorney General.
I think what we should do, honestly, is when, I'm not saying if, I'm saying when Joe Biden picks Kamala Harris as VP, because I'm already putting it in the atmosphere. Because at this point, if it's not evident, it should be clear by now that no white person on that ticket, an all-white ticket is failure, pretty much. But when that actually happens, y'all, we're going to have to do a full disinformation episode and go pretty much in detail of what that basically looks like so people can understand. So that you guys have the necessities and the tools in order to fight off disinformation, because I think a lot of this has actually already caused a lot of good things, especially for the K-Hive, being the fact that early on we were a little silent when it came to the misinformation. Now we're all on your ass in your comment section if you
all
even
over it.
It.
Yeah, but K-Hive is so toxic. No, you're toxic, and we're checking your ass. Be clear about that.
Absolutely not toxic. We're just bringing you the facts and receipts, and you can have a nice day and just apologize. It's just real easy. And I think a lot of reasons why a lot of people are still holding on to that is because a lot of people don't want to admit to being wrong about Kamala Harris. I think meeting her and actually understanding her is when people actually get a chance to really change their mind, just like everyone else who's met Kamala Harris has changed their mind. And actually,
though, interestingly enough, I saw that Sean King, and I'm not co-signing Sean King. I don't have. You saw it, Maya. You saw it.
I retweeted it.
Sean King, one of the main people that smeared Kamala Harris. He got me blocked on Twitter chat because he knew I was gonna come for his ass if I ever saw anything he said. But Sean King actually tweeted out tonight, and like I said, F him. But there comes a point where you have, if you want to continue to besmirch and impugn this Black woman, you hurt your credibility, because it's undeniable that she is the voice for the people. Hashtag for the people. That was her slogan for a reason, because that is her mantra. That is really what she believes in. But he tweeted out this is Friday night. Now y'all gonna be watching this on another day, but on Friday night, May 29th, Sean King, I'm not saying go to his profile, follow him, Chad. Do not do that. But I'm telling you that he tweeted out that Senator Kamala Harris's interview on Joy Reid on MSNBC was the best response that he's heard from a politician on this issue. So we mentioned earlier that Senator Kamala Harris said that the streets are stained with Black blood. And she very forcefully she called it murder. She called for the prosecutions of these people. She called for some of the things that we discussed throughout this episode. So at a certain point, if you're being honest, you have to acknowledge the undeniable force that is Kamala Harris. And you have to acknowledge that she gets it. And if you're willing to acknowledge that, then there's no other obvious choice about who we need to sit beside Joe Biden in that administration. There's no other choice.
There isn't. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I can't think of anybody who's actually going to be able to speak on our issues just uncut like Kamala Harris. Like, I've never would have heard anybody say what Kamala Harris has said, especially when it pertains to Black lives.
And one more thing, I'm sorry, I promise this is the last thing. But the solution, be clear, is not to go to a person who never had skin in the game, never did anything whatsoever on the issue of criminal justice, one way or another, prior to running for president. That's not the solution. The solution is not to say, let's reward people who never, ever got in there and tried to do anything, and who conveniently adopted policies for a presidential campaign. Let's reward people who never had who never put up a fight for this with that seat at the table. That is absolutely not the right solution. The right solution is a person who understands the difference between local jurisdiction and state jurisdiction and federal jurisdiction, who understands whether the Department of Justice works, who understands whether the judicial system works. That is what we need right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely, y'all. Like, I don't know what else we could do. I mean, but one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not begging Joe for anything. I'm just telling him what he needs in order to win. Because at the end of the day, Joe, you cannot play with this election. You cannot play with our lives when it comes to what's going on, especially right now in this day and age. And a lot of Black people are tired. And for you to pick anyone other than Kamala Harris with all the facts that we laid out, with her huge unnecessary record, but it's not unnecessary, but it's longer than you can even imagine. But for you to not acknowledge the fact that we need someone like Kamala Harris, it would be a slap in the face to everything that's happened, especially in the last week, in the last 2 weeks, in the last month, because we've lost, I don't know how many Black lives this year alone. And a lot of people are putting themselves at danger just to have our voices heard, just to have a potential seat at the table, Joe. And that's all I have to say about that. Does anybody have any closing remarks before we wrap this up?
Maybe I just have one, and that is, as this week goes on, there's a lot of, obviously there's going to be continued a lot of stress, but I would like people to keep in mind something. As Kamala has been going and talking on talk shows, I have noticed an uptick in bots online as well. And that's why when David Wasserman today with Red State, he's a pollster, I think Drew and I both set him straight a little bit today, but he was saying it's fairly obvious that Amy Klobuchar is off the list, but it's also impossible to ignore the undercurrent of distrust among young / Black / progressive activists towards Kamala Harris. And I had to say right away to him, wait. You don't realize how much she was attacked by bots and trolls, and do you not even question why she was attacked by trolls and bots? So I want people to understand in two things. This week, that's going to be happening, upticks for bots against Kamala, but also against like Black Lives Matter. You're going to see a lot of weaponization online. I just want people to be aware of that, not to engage with the bots and the trolls, but to report them and block them and get them off of Twitter. I've said before, but a study was done where they said they knew at least 15% of Twitter is bots. It was a study done by UT, by the University of Texas. That's millions and millions of bots. You can't block all of them, but just I would like for people to go into this week and recognize before they get really upset with some of the disgusting things that these bots might be saying, that to take a breath for a second, report and block. And if they're real people like David Wasserman from Red State, just set them straight. That's all I have.
Thank you, Maya. Well, I think that's pretty
one
much.
more thing that I do want to say is, back to the K-Hive thing, live with the K-Hive. We are Kamala's army. And don't let people say, oh, the K-Hive is this, the K-Hive is that. Ignore them, because what we are is effective. And now is not the time to shy away from these smears. As to Maya's point, there's a lot of bots. There's going to be deflecting away from Amy Klobuchar. There's going to be people who are trying to prop up their preferred person who does not have the receipts. And so it is absolutely the time to not so much engage with bots, to Maya's point, but to push back on these narratives that they're trying to set, because these narratives are powerful, and they were a large part of Kamala's undoing, because she did not have the profile, and the media was very, very much complicit in furthering these narratives. And so we have the power to shift that. That's why we do Live with the K-Hive, and I'm seeing that the K-Hive is on people's asses. Sometimes I don't have to comment. I go in there and say, okay, that's handled, like Olivia Pope. So keep handling it. Keep handling it, because it matters. It matters because truth at some point has to matter. Truth has to prevail, because Kamala needs us. And there are forces that are bigger than us individually, but not bigger than us as a collective. So keep up that fight, because the fight to try to use her record, which, as I've laid out, is very exemplary, as all of us have laid out, is very exemplary, as a pretext to eliminate her, that fight is starting to ramp up. And so do not shy away from it. Tag us on Twitter if you need some backup. I'd be surprised if you need to tag somebody for some backup, because usually the backup is already there as soon as you say Kamala. Right. But please feel free to tag us, because I will come and I'll help. Now, if somebody says they don't like Kamala, don't tag me now. I don't give a damn. But if somebody has a specific smear and it's on a larger, like a David Wasserman or something like that, CNN, then yeah, go ahead and tag us, and I'll go ahead and handle that. Period.
Because we have to hold those people with all the influence accountable for the things that they say, especially in the fact that they have a large following. Because literally that can literally, chime in. And unfortunately, when they say misinformation, like Maya said, it's backed up by bots. So it's pushed to where a lot of people are thinking, oh, if it's got 30,000 retweets, if it's got 10,000 retweets, then it means it's got to be real. It's got to be a positive. And he's got to know what he's talking about. No, just because they got a blue check don't mean that they know what the hell they're talking about. A lot of people literally walking around here with the wrong information. I mean, child, I don't know if y'all saw what happened this morning with Vance Jones, what he was talking about. But he made some. I'm not gonna go into it. Forget it. But anyways, thank you for joining Live with the K-Hive. This was a great episode, you guys. I hope y'all have a good one. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Stay safe out there, y'all. I'm not saying don't do what you got to do, but I'm saying stay awake, because we are going to be targeted. These protests are going to be targeted by domestic terrorists and things like that. The calls have already gone out by y'all's president. So stay safe and stay prepared.
And please, people in Minneapolis, if you do not have to go outside to protest, please stay inside, keep your kids safe, and make sure that you're very aware of what's going on. Absolutely. And please have your phone on you at all times and press that record button, because it ain't safe out here for Black folks.
Remember, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, y'all. Please put your mask on, for real. Don't get sick.
Absolutely. And remember, Black Lives Matter.
All right, peace out, y'all.